Jill, can you hear me? I think you might be muted.
I can hear you, and I have I started so I believe everybody can hear.
Okay.
We're going to wait just a couple more minutes for a couple more people attending. See some people dialing in right now, so we'll start in just a few minutes. All right, we'll give it just another minute or so for some more additional people to join, and then we'll get started. All right, we'll get started. So first off, I want to thank everybody for taking time to join us today for our educational session. Today, we're going to discuss how to gain confidence in your month-end closing process with the help of our QuickLaunch information engine. So research shows us that finance teams out there, you're stressed out due to spending about 80% of your time wrestling with corporate data just to meet your monthly deadlines. During the session today, Adam's going to show you how our platform can help you transform your JD Edwards, all of your other corporate data, which will then give you more time to analyze the numbers and spend less of your time preparing them, which is the current situation. For those of you that are not super familiar with Preferred Strategies, we're the industry leader in delivering modern business intelligence data solutions to JD Edwards and Viewpoint Vista ERP software users. Our mission is to successfully partner with our customers on the implementation of our innovative QuickLaunch information engine foundation, which delivers near real-time access to your data via in-depth reports, analytics, graphs, charts, dashboards, etc., all of which are just used to empower your business leaders, your employees, and your organization as a whole. So becoming data-driven really allows you to use your data as the strategic asset that it is. It's going to help you make informed business decisions, and ultimately it increases your efficiency, reduces your labor costs, helps you to gain powerful insights to future opportunities that ultimately make your company more profitable and more competitive. Before I hand the presentation off to Adam, he's our president and founder, I want to quickly highlight some features of our platform, of the webinar platform. So you'll see off to the right-hand side of your screen, there's an area there that you can submit questions. So we want to make sure that as we're going through the presentation today, if you have any questions at all, make sure and type those into the chat or into the question section, either one. I'll be monitoring that. And then at the end, once Adam's done going through his presentation, I'm going to go through and then ask the questions for you. So make sure and just be typing them in there. I'll chat, mark them down, and then we'll address all of those at the end. So we're excited to get started. Adam, take it away.
Muted myself. Thank you, Jill. So yeah, thank you everybody for attending today. A little bit of background. Again, I'm the president founder of Preferred Strategies. We've been in business now. It's our 20-year anniversary as of a company, so that's exciting. And we've seen a lot over the last 2 decades how the technologies have changed to get to where they are today, and we'll showcase some of that as we get going. This is kind of a topic that's a little bit dear and near to my heart. I actually learned JD Edwards working in a finance department, and we struggled getting information out of JD Edwards and putting together the month-end operating statements, and that was part of my responsibility. So I've got a fair amount of experience and exposure specifically in this area. It's also one of the reasons why I feel that when it comes to financial management analysis and reporting is a huge strength, because we have several team members that have lived and breathed this and been controllers for companies and understand all the underpinnings of the technology of JD Edwards and how to make that work best to get your month-end close much more. So I think one of the things that we're kind of, well, I'll go through the agenda and then we'll get down. This is going to be a fairly, not too much PowerPoint, just a couple slides, a few slides to chat about some of the underlying kind of considerations and technologies, and then we'll get into the live demonstration. So as Jill kind of shared a little bit about us, so that's who we are. A little bit about the financial close and data challenges that we come across. We'll speak to that a little bit, and then dive right into the live demonstration. So one of the things, just to recap a little bit about what makes us unique and our purpose here as a company is really, at the end of the day, as Joe alluded to, it's making smarter decisions is actually the best way to make an impact, to move your bottom line or move the needle in your organization in a variety of different ways. But really for us, we look at it as kind of 3 criteria. So do you run JD Edwards? Are you a data-driven culture? Are you striving to become one? Have you chosen the Microsoft Power BI technology as your future and as your data strategy for your organization? That combination of those 3 things, there's nobody better in the world to help support you in that and these initiatives, given those 3 criteria. What we've created, and we'll kind of uncover and peel the onion on this as we go, is we call a QuickLaunch information engine. So we feed all the data into this in-memory engine with all the different dimensionality, and we'll showcase this slicing and dicing around the financials and general ledger, but other areas as well, whether or not it be sales or purchasing or manufacturing. In essence, from this engine, people then can grab the data they need when they need it on any device, from their mobile device or their laptop, or again, an Excel spreadsheet, as we'll show today, and they can mold that data how they need to, but it's in a governed way to make a decision they're confident about. And as they continue to work, they can then reduce some of the typical challenges of getting away from manual manipulation of data, let's say in a spreadsheet, and we'll kind of showcase that in just a moment. So about the platforms, again, we talked about Power BI. There's Gartner. If you follow Gartner at all, there's it's called the Magic Quadrant, and they come every year with this Leaders Quadrant. And so these are kind of the technologies that really lead the market in this space. Looking at this list, there's lots of them. You probably recognize some of these names here. Every one of these companies that they made it on this list, they've got success stories. They all can do the same thing of getting companies data in a better way to make better decisions. What we've done is really just aligned with the Microsoft technology stack, and Microsoft with the monthly updates to Power BI, getting not just bug fixes, it's new functionality, advanced analytics. These are things coming into the platform every single month, and it's hard for a lot of other alternatives to keep up with Microsoft. They made it, you can download this on your desktop for free, or it's so cost effective if you want to then start sharing throughout the organization, and now to take bigger sets of data with what now they call Power BI Premium to kind of get this fully enterprise wide. So this is really just the landscape of the market, and for companies that have chosen Power BI as their strategy, definitely we're kind of aligned from the start. So really, here's a couple of examples of what we see typically today. And this is, again, the whole topic of this education session is confidence in your month-end close. And so what's feeding that, right? We've got data from these different sources. That's a JD Edwards as the key. You've got other data from the warehousing systems, or maybe you've got HR payroll systems that need to be part of your close. You've got maybe stuff in Salesforce. So really what we see is you've got, we call this kind of reporting house of cards. Someone goes and builds an ERP report. Next thing you know, that one report turned into 10, turned into 100, right? So now these are built by someone in IT. I'm a user, maybe I'm a controller, maybe I'm a financial analyst, maybe I'm not a programmer to be able to build these myself. So what do? I export from that report into my spreadsheet, okay? Next thing you know, I've got one spreadsheet turns into 10, turns into 100. So this path of taking from reports, maybe from the system, or it could be a query. Maybe it's an inquiry screen in JD Edwards, I export, or table browser or something. So in essence, we got data flowing through reports to spreadsheets, and then somebody comes across and downloads Power BI. So next thing you know, someone goes out there, downloads a desktop, connects to some data and says, oh, great, I've got basically a Power BI report to change the data visually in that spreadsheet into something more meaningful with tables, and not just data tables, but charts and graphs and KPIs and so on. Next thing you know, that one Power BI report fed from spreadsheets turns into 10 turns into 20 to 30 and so on, right? So the consideration here is there's some greatness here, and we want to point that out with this type of evolution. And we see, again, we see this all the time. This is great for prototyping, because for a lot of companies, seeing data in a new way, it's hard, right? No one likes change. I'm used to my spreadsheet. I know how to get the data in rows and columns, and I know how the CFO says he wants it. So we're feeding all of this engine the way we have, or the plan, every single month. But with this type of approach, now what happens is we have to look at this overarching picture and say, where's our business logic living, right? We've got business logic living in a report. We've got VLOOKUPs and filters and other stuff going on in our spreadsheet. Hopefully I didn't mess that up, because I don't, I'm going on vacation next week. Whoever's got to basically be managing that spreadsheet for the month-end close, let's cross our fingers. And then we've got business logic living over here in these little Power BI reports. And so when you take Power BI, and we'll show you that we'll build a report from scratch in Power BI, it's, you can grab data from virtually anywhere, but each Power BI report becomes its own little silo of a little engine and little data model. So if we think about this, and around the month-end close, we got financials, we might have things like, what's our gross profit? How are we defining gross profit, right? Well, is that being defined in the report, the spreadsheet, or it also is defined maybe as a calculation in the Power BI, because maybe we want to make it where we can add some timeness to it. Like if a lot of the financials, you're going to have, what's my month to date, my quarter to date, my year to date. I need these calculations to be calculating based on a time frame. And so when we do that, the last thing we want is gross profit being in multiple places, because a change needs to be made to that logic. Where's that change occurring? So now this results in basically change across the board, reporting anarchy, and kind of a governance nightmare. So this is, again, great for prototyping. The other challenge here is for a lot of customers, we've got some customers pretty large in size, the spreadsheets can't fit enough of the volume of data that needs to be brought into these processes for month-end analysis. So they're always going to have some issues there. So let's look at the next step. So really, what we then see is companies realize we got to get away from these layers of points of failure. And so the quick answer might be, or that's not quick because this takes a long time to do as well, is let's get rid of the Excel extracts as part of this analytics process. So next thing you know, they start building queries, or you can start building queries to get directly, and so that cuts out maybe the Excel extract or the report to Excel and so on. But even this, now we still have the business logic multiple places, and most of the time what we see is there isn't really a well thought out process of let's unify and let's kind of centralize all of this key data as the asset, your general ledger, AP, all of this data into one place, right? And you probably heard people talk about when it comes to reporting analytics, the single source of truth, right? The only way to get confidence in your month-end close and confidence in your financial data is to get to that single source of truth. You have to have governance on your calculations and measures, so things like gross profit or actual budget, revenue, costs, EBITDA, so on. So that's the key. And then we also want to kind of make it manageable, right? So you want to be consistent. So even with this, if this were the path, we did kind of reduce the silos of all these pieces of information. But now if we have, let's say, 3 different general ledger reports in Power BI that share some of that, we also have to get, let's say the business unit or the company or the address book. Well, that's living in AP and AR and inventory and purchase. So we have same data going all these other places, right? And so, once people get to this stage, then it's like, okay, well, we made one step, probably the right step in the right direction, but we're still not fully confident in our data. And so really, what I think we're all looking for is this, right? We all want the easy button. We can all sleep at night much better if we have an easy button, okay? So there is no easy button, unfortunately. This is reality, and JD Edwards, as you probably, if you're on this session, have come to realize there's pretty much is no easy button. But we spent thousands of hours as an organization. This is all we do. We live and breathe this every day. We follow all the best practices out there, using the best technologies, and basically created a methodology of QuickLaunch. And this is the emphasis of how we're going to be able to build that confidence that we're trying to gain in this process. So this is kind of we call it preferred strategies way, the power of one. So really, instead of having those little silos of little data sets, so every one of those reports being its own individual data set that needs to be modified, we're centralizing that into one. So think about this little cube in the middle here. We pull the data from JD Edwards, Salesforce, other data sources. It can all come into this single source of truth in memory. A lot of people look at this and think, oh, it is like a virtual data warehouse in memory. It's all using native Microsoft Power BI premium data sets. So that's where it lives. Again, it has general ledger and accounts payable, accounts receivable. So you can build all that from the same location, manage it all in one place. And then it's shared logic. Gross profit only lives in one place. Now we're going to still build reports from that in Power BI and Excel and so on. But really, it's kind of getting the secured, governed way at getting at the data. The other thing about it is before we were pulling all this data to all these other data sets. With this, we load data one time and it's on an interval. It'll be rescheduled. But I'm not loading the business unit 8 times. I'm not loading the address book 10 times every hour. It goes in, once, because then it's shared across all those different modules. So we're able to reduce. And we've just done some calculations and examples of real customer size type data. And so, one company that might be pulling with us 50 million rows in a cycle might be 300 or 400 million if they go with the other screen we're just on. So enough about that, but you'll notice on the right side of this screen, there's a few things. You've got Excel in 2 flavors here, what we call cube value. So we can show you, and we will show you on this session, how to build formatted reports in Excel. We also will show you how to do a pivot table. We'll probably start with the pivot table first. Then though, to take those month-end operating statements to the web within the Microsoft platform, what they call paginated reports as part of Power BI. So now we can actually drill down through P&Ls and balance sheets over the web, and then those can be the way that to kind of share that key information with managers and decision makers. And then we'll come back to Power BI. So we're going to kind of take this order because, again, most of the people in finance that we work with, when we start working with them, they're living in Excel and breathing that every day. So let's start there, and then we'll kind of build up to the Power BI. Okay, so let me get out of PowerPoint here, and I'm going to start in Excel. Okay, and I'm going to first start before we get into that. So if I just take a blank tab, a blank spreadsheet, so I just have a clear spreadsheet. Let's say that I was just trying to build maybe a trial balance or balance sheet or something that's going to be, financial related. I know I'm going to have to calculate things like inception to date, month to date, year to date, things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just select a cell. I'm going to go to data. I got to connect to this single source of truth, this, data set. So I'm going to hit get data from database, from analysis services, and I'm going to put in the name of the location. This could be a few different flavors, but typically this will be now a Power BI, premium data set. I'm going to connect to a model. And you'll notice when I connect to this, because as I mentioned, I'm connecting to one source, but then we have what are called perspectives. So this functionality within Microsoft where you can take within one cube and then say, okay, I want to splice out all the elements of that cube that are applicable to purchasing or AP or AR or GL and so on. So if I wanted to build, let's say, a balance sheet or trial balance, I would grab the general ledger perspective. That's where all that GL, just like if you're going to JD Edwards and say, I want to look at a trial balance there, I want to look at my account ledger inquiry, right? Or GL ledger, that's where I would go. We've kind of taken that same. And what data is available to us, we're actually bringing into this in-memory model all the same elements that exist in those inquiry screens within JDE. Okay, so you'll notice now I've got a pivot table. If you're in finance, and I said, are you familiar with pivot tables? I'm sure 90% of you say, yep, I use them every day. Let me go ahead and start here. There's a couple things that we want to point out. Is let's just go up to our account. This is basically the 901 account table. And we'll kind of show some of these, but we've actually identified, we work with you, do you have category codes? What's your elements around the JD Edwards chart of accounts that you're using for this? And I'm gonna go down and grab, let's say, object account and description, and just drag that to our rows. I'm gonna go now and grab up here, we've got some measures. So in JD Edwards, if you look at the actual GL table, there's an amounts field and a units field on your general ledger, your 911 table. Question is, well, how do you make sense of that? If I just aggregate all the amounts, I'm getting budgets and forecasts and different ledger types, so I need to define a ledger type. So we, in essence, have already done that. So we take those two calculations of amounts and units, but we apply logic to them in one central place that's not being repeated and done differently by different, authors or developers and so on. So that's how we get back to that level of confidence. So if I wanted to do a balance sheet, I want to grab this actual amount inception to date calc. That's basically from the beginning of time. That's how the balance sheet calcs work. So I'm just going to drag that in. So within 2 clicks, we've got our object account, we've got our inception date amount. You might be wondering, okay, well, what's it calculating inception to date based on? So we need to give it, a time element to that. And so part of our model, we have what's called a calendar that we brought in. It's basically tailored, especially we have a lot of customers that run on a 445 or 544. They've got 6 different companies all on different calendars. So we support all of that. We've already figured out how to make sense of that from a roll-up purposes for your financial reporting. If we go down and just grab, let's say, our year period, and I'm just going to drag that in as a filter. So now I come up, select this, and I can pick a period and year, and it's going to dynamically calculate for us. If I go to 2019 period 9, it's going to recalculate this inception date through that specific period. Okay, if I go and pick maybe period 8, again, just crib a different one, and it's going to automatically calculate. So these are on the fly calculations. There's no export of a whole, extract to Excel spreadsheet. All this data, these millions and millions of records of data, are living in memory. And in this report, I've asked it to go and query that model and come back with one row in this pivot table for each object account. Okay, let's go and add some of those groupings. And so if I go to the account, one of the things that we do as well, if you have cat codes and that's how you're defining, that's wonderful. We have a whole strategy. We can help provide direction. If you want to use cat codes, account cat codes for financial reporting, but not really there yet, we can help you with that. But you'll notice under these reporting levels, so we're going to build out together based on your business logic, your chart of accounts, your account ranges, your level of detail, your account category codes, whatever that is, we'll define that, so it's unique to you, but we create these hierarchy levels. So you'll notice if I drag and bring in business level 1 above the object account in my pivot table, you'll see here we've got things like, assets, liability, and equity, okay? Our sample data has some other stuff dropping out. That's just, again, bad sample data, but But now bringing down level 2 below 1, you'll start seeing this to take a little more shape. So liability and equity breaks down by liabilities and equity, bring in level 3, right? So next thing you know, we start seeing some structure here, okay? So we could go in and look at, this inception date. Well, if I want to compare that to prior year, right? We can go into our actual amount inception date. We can go to our prior year inception date for the same period. So again, another drag. So we now can start seeing these different comparisons of data, or maybe better yet, what if I wanted to see what is these values changing every month throughout the year? We have these predefined calcs. If you did budgets, we got actuals, budgets, forecasts, current period, prior period, variance calcs. We'll show you some KPIs in a little bit. We also have some additional measures, things where adding more business logic in this central source, where we're defining from your logic revenue, and now you've got 50 revenue calculations that are automatically always going to return the right value. So that's how we get that, again, confidence. Let me remove prior year for a moment, and I'm going to bring our year period down as our column. And now you'll notice I've got almost every period and year. Let's go and just filter down on 1 year of data. So I'm going to go back to the calendar, and I'm going to bring year up as a filter instead of the year period. And now if we go and select 2019 as a whole year, now we can kind of see what are those different months of that trending over time, okay? So this is an example of building an Excel pivot table. I'm not exporting data to Excel. There's no VLOOKUPs. So this model is going to be refreshing with data all throughout the day, right? So typically you put it on a schedule, be an hourly schedule most commonly, but you have the ability as someone to refresh it on demand, or I post a journal entry in JD Edwards, I want to get that data sooner than waiting for the next hour. So there's ways to kind of get that into your process. But there's also, if I wanted to drill down to some details here, I could double click on that and it'll take me down to the GL transactions, because that's a level of granularity that we're bringing in to this data set. So we want to show, again, we could go in and build pivot tables. Now, if I had 5 flavors of these pivot tables on this tab, I can connect, and then I open this spreadsheet, it's going to automatically update all of that with the most recent data. But every time I go and click on anything in this pivot table, every click, everything I do is going to go in and query that model and back. So if this data set that I'm connected to just refreshed, and I clicked and and expanded one of these or added another field in my pivot table, every single action in the pivot table triggers a query back and forth to that data set. And the beauty of this is that we've already taken the data that we need for all of this out of JDE. So as we're playing and working with all of this data, there's zero impact to the source system as we're slicing and dicing all of these thousands of types of analysis for month-end close. Okay, so that is a pivot table on top of the model. So let's go and look at another example here. This is a few different flavors. So maybe you want to build more formatted reports that you can't really do very well in a pivot table. In this case, here's an example where maybe we've got per unit P&L, so we're doing some calculations, putting our per unit sold at the top. Maybe we want to look at percentage of sales, and so these are a couple different flavors, month to date, year to date, actual versus budget, variances. Maybe again, we've got a breakdown kind of we showed just a minute ago, kind of by period. So you can kind of get those types of trended type P&Ls. We also are adding these, and you notice that when I select one of these, there's actually a code. So this is no longer a pivot table. This is actually what's called a cube value function. It's a native Excel function. You'll notice that in this Excel formula, we're connecting to a connection called GL. So we've brought in connection to that data set, just like we showed you at the beginning. Get data, data analysis services, pick your model, pick your source, and then you've got that connection for it to basically query back and forth. This column here, we're bringing the actual amount month to date. We're going to go in and bring back the year and period from these cells. We're going to have the object account range be derived. We just decided to put this range over here. Again, if this was a cat code or we wanted to actually pull it by the name, we can get however creative we want to be what's going to drive that. And we can also hard code all of that. So we could hard code, or we could have other cells in the spreadsheet drive what's in these values. So here's another flavor of a P&L. Maybe I've got a consolidating P&L. I've got my different divisions. I need to see those as different columns to get to the consolidated, value of, on the right, consolidating. Maybe same thing with the balance sheet, right? Kind of as we were showing you a minute, but this is now maybe a little bit more formatted in nature, looking at our month-to-date, activity that way. Here's where, again, you could create some of these. Maybe we added some additional filters for pick your companies. You could actually have some of those period, year, and company, division, business unit, all those other filters that you want defined on each column. So that way you could have each column be all unique and how it's going to calculate against the model. In this case, we just kind of went in and said, well, let's just go on to look at quarter to date instead of year to date. We could do that, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and flip these to quarter to date, and then you can see it kind of recalculate there. So again, it's something that's very powerful in how quickly you get to the answers that are not an extract of a tab, right? The data tab, right? You have this Excel expert of a trial balance, again, VLOOKUPs and so on. And this is an example that, we, just looking around, maybe I'm analyzing cost of goods sold. I've got the different, again, month to date budget, prior year, some variances, percentage of sales. And maybe I'm going to just have some dialogue in here to type in some explanations there. But what if I wanted this not just for month to date? Again, I want it for year to date as well. So if we just go here, I'm just going to highlight this, Control C, go out here and Control V to paste. I'm going to switch these again, just like we saw a minute ago, to year to date. And voila, not only are we making sure, and I know that everything that's connecting is going to be, we've already validated that all of these are matching exactly what's in JDA. That's part of the process. And when it comes to the financial roll-ups, we basically have some catch-alls, right? So if a new account gets added that didn't have a home in a hierarchy, it'll kind of get, dumped out as like accounts not specified. So it'll, draw your attention to things that you need to update. So that was very quickly, we looked at Excel pivot table. We looked at now Excel more formatted type reports. And again, all of these would be, I open this up and it's all connected, or I want to go trigger, refresh to the data set. I hit refresh and it's going to go grab it. Again, I can go and change the period, change the year. It's going to automatically then just recalculate all of these calculations for us. We don't have to think about any export or manual process. Okay. So now we're going to move on to what are called the paginated reports. So what if I wanted to go and see, and I want to start with maybe like an income statement. So in this case, it's not an Excel spreadsheet. Part of the Power BI platform has the visual representation. We're going to show you that in a moment with Power BI. But it's paginated, and the history of this paginated, if you actually are a Microsoft type, shop, so to speak, or use Microsoft reporting technologies, the foundation of paginated reports was SSRS. So it's considered SSRS, or SQL Server Reporting Services. It's just now baked into the Power BI platform, and you can basically build these SSRS reports not from stored procedures or views, but they're actually against the same exact data models that are driving all those pivot tables in Excel, driving our Power BI reports and dashboards, and they can then drive these same reports. So we get all of our information that we need from financials coming from the same source with the exact same measures, meaning the exact same thing, and everybody knows it, okay? So really, I'm here and I want to see, okay, this P&L, I've filtered down a couple things. We can select some, do you want to group this consolidated or by company? Want to filter on some other things? But we want to drill down this. This is over the web. So if I were to look at what makes up sales and marketing expenses here. So if I select that, it's going to, in essence, drill down on that report, because we've defined this report and we've worked with you to do this to those hierarchies. Now, we also have a training to teach you how to do all this stuff and build these reports on your own as well. But a lot of times, part of our out of box for GL includes these paginated reports for income statement and balance sheet as part of the solution. So now, let's say I want to drill into rent expense. What makes up this specific account, of information? Breaks it down to the full account, business unit, object, and sub, right? Full account string and JD Edwards. Let's drill down to the transactions because, again, we brought it from the most transaction detail. That's the level of data that we're bringing into the model. Now let's go ahead and we're going to aggregate that up, but we can still drill down to those details. Our sample data's got a lot of journal entries. We have here a payment voucher, right, to United Rentals. What's the deal with that invoice? Or I can go and click on that. So if you're using type of document imaging and want to be able to refer back to and drill down to those documents, we can do that from here. We can also do this, I'll show you in a minute, from Power BI. So that's a real quick example of using paginated reports as part of that monthly financial reporting process. And then if we want to go back within Power BI, you can kind of create these kind of dashboards that might have data coming from a variety of different areas, and maybe even outside JD Edwards, some within JD Edwards, different modules per se. We've organized this in an app. This is a view-only app within Power BI, so it's read-only. I can still interact and drill as we've kind of demonstrated, but I can't author anything here. This would be for, you define what's included in the app and then what's available to the users that have access to this for their analysis. So if I wanted to look at the general ledger, we have a general ledger sample. For every module of JD Edwards that we support, we deliver a sample, okay? So in this case, you'll notice we've got, revenue, gross profit, net income, budget, prior year, so we can kind of see how we're doing. If I were to go up here at the top and choose maybe within the region, maybe it's a different, you would have your own slicers, these are called slicers in Power BI. So I want to see this view of the data, maybe not all consolidated. I can go click on central, or I can go click on west, right, or east, or, and so all of a sudden I click on east, you'll notice here, all of a sudden my revenue picture, and this is what's nice about getting these KPIs, but also getting it where you've got the time, because I would have thought if I'm just looking at my quarter information, I'm actually looking really good. I'm better than both of my targets for the quarter. I'm okay because I'm yellow because I'm between my two targets for the month, but I'm still red and back $100,000 from our year-to-date numbers there, okay? So just by selecting different filters and these KPIs with a color coding can help me draw my attention to some areas. So the traditional P&L might have, again, I've got a grouping in my P&L report by branch and by territory and by, a manager. And so I've got, a 75-page report. This might have been on page 37. How am I going to find that? Right? So this is what Power BI does. It brings those outliers to the forefront. So in our sample here, we also then have a tab dedicated to revenue. Here you can see like a revenue trend. We can go ahead and flip this to month to date instead of year to date as an example and see month by month how we're doing. We can also go and pick, maybe it's a different period or year. I want to look at maybe period 12, right? So now I can go ahead and select, a different month, maybe a gross profit tab, or an expense. So just like we showed you a drill down a minute ago in the paginated P&L, here's another flavor. So this, and actually I'm gonna go back to period 9 for a second to showcase. So this would be, maybe our total expenses consolidated. Again, I could filter down to a division or a product or region or whatever CAC codes that you want. This forecast is actually taking a year-to-date amount, actual amount, plus remember my remaining month's budget. So right now, if I'm choosing period 9, this forecast is 9 months of actuals, remaining 3 months of budget. The two of those combined this is where I'm going to end up. If I hit my budget for the remainder of the year, I'm going to end up at 9.7 million in expenses. Okay, and that's going to be over $1 million more than last year, and 1.1 million more than my budget. Right? If I look at the breakdown of these expenses, I'm 333,000 over in sales and marketing. Right? So if I were to right-click on this and drill down, we can then drill down to, in this case, we had this chart drill down to the object accounts. And just like we did before, we can then drill through to the transaction. So we could actually add more layers of drill to the company, business unit, the different CAC codes, like anything you want to slice and dice the data is there. So like we did, we just drill down. So this is now in each subject area, and we'll show a couple of examples of these. There'll be a Power BI sample report. There's also part of the general ledger. You're going to might have KPIs and ratios. So what we actually have defined 17 of these as part of the GL that, and there's, I think that the organization is called Risk Management Association. They actually analyze these 17 ratios across companies, all industries, all sizes. So, it's fairly easy to go and say, okay, how are we stacking up against others for these calculations or ratios in the industry? And then this is just like a quick glance compared to maybe prior year. Are we doing better than last year or not? Here, days receivable, I can see I'm actually red. So if we want to drill down on that, we can actually drill down to an underlying report. Now we can see what is our days receivables trended over time. We're actually doing better, right? We're less than prior year on collecting, and then all of a sudden we switch that, let's say in November. So is that worthy of investigating further or not? So this is an example of Power BI. We go down here and look at like accounts receivable as an example, right? We have as of aging. So this is a true as of aging. As we go back in time and pick a different period in year, it's going to recalculate the true as of aging back in time. It's easy to calculate at current aging. What is it today? Going back and doing this dynamically without a bunch of work files and those types of processes is not easy. There is no easy button for this, but this is something that is part of the out of box for providing, again, confidence in making sure it's done right and getting back the right result when you're doing this. And so this is an already report, and just like we did before, we might want to drill down and see what's here. We can drill down to the aging details or the gross details, so you can still as a user consume and interact and drill down to answer those questions of what's making up the data that I see. So last thing I want to do as we kind of bring this to a close was we've shown you again Excel. We've shown you Excel a couple different ways. We've shown some paginated reports, the income statements and balance sheets over the web. And we've also have shown some Power BI to kind of get a different flavor. But let's go ahead and just, if we were building that same as of aging from scratch, what would that look like? So when I open up Power BI Desktop, and you can go and download it for free if you haven't already from Microsoft, when you open it up, there's a field, there's nothing there. It says get data. It has no knowledge of JD Edwards, has no knowledge of any of your data, other than that they've defined some connections. So if I go up here to get data and choose analysis services, and I'm going to put in the name of the location I'm going to connect to. I'm going to connect live. Again, I just want to kind of connect this report to that data set, that in-memory cube, so to speak. And so now if we go and select the model itself, and now you can see we've got, the different perspectives. We did this before in Excel. We grab general ledger. If I go to grab account receivable, so I'm going to select AR and choose OK. And hopefully someone gets the stopwatch here, see how long it takes me to build an as of aging. So here you'll notice that account receivable. Now we do also, if I mouse over these, there's a lineage back, because people say, well, geez, I don't even know what columns you grabbing from JD Edwards when you select over that. So when I basically pull, you'll notice that I mouse over these fields, it's coming back with the actual fields from JD Edwards. We've already documented all that. So if I go down and say grab the customer name, I'm just going to drag that into the canvas. And so that's going to come up with one row for each customer. Let's go to our accounts receivable. We have with AR, you've got discount taken, gross, taxable, so on. We've created these more powerful as of aging calculations so we can go back in time to do that. Here's, let's say, by GL date or invoice date or net due date. I'm going to drag that in. When I drag that in, it seems like I can see that, but I need that broken down by an aging band. Is it 0 to 30, 30 to 60? So I grab the aging band. If I bring that in, right, now it's just basically a data table, but we want to see those as maybe columns, so we can convert that from a data table into a matrix. So now we do that to a matrix, everything's over 150. I need to go back in time, because as of right now, maybe that's truly the case. Let me go back. If I drag year period, drag that into the canvas as a, the list of potential, dates, make it a slicer, so I can then pick and choose and filter. So I go back to 2017 period 6. Now we've got that here, and if we go and pick, and we want to see, okay, that's great. I want to know what companies before I go down to the customer. So now we can go to our company, bring that in, and above the customer name. So now we can see those companies. We can then drill down, expand them all, right? So we can kind of see the companies and the customers. We can also go, and maybe I want to know within the accounts receivable, what are the documents, right? What are the invoices? So we can go ahead and grab those and then drill down within a customer down to see what makes up maybe a capital system. What are those invoices we might need to follow up with them on, right? Especially the ones that are getting pretty late. So that's an example. Now we could, because it's Power BI, and now I'm authoring this, I'm just going to go here and take this, and I'm going to filter this down. I'm going to just drag it down. I'm going to do Control C, Control V. I'm going to copy paste. So now I've got this on top. What if I want this, maybe just not the breakdown by customer, or I don't want the document in this. I just want to see this by aging band as maybe a bar chart, right? And maybe I want to stack that bar chart by customer. Okay. So now we can go in and let's get rid of company. And I'm going to make this customer name a legend. So you can kind of start working with the tool. So now I can see here's just our total as of agings by, you know, the aging band. And if I select these, it'll actually do is it'll kind of filter down the data table to where that is. So it kind of gives me right immediate information there. So once we're done, we could save this report, hit publish, and publish it back to the web. Okay, and then it's basically, you know, we log in and then, you know, it goes through the cycle. So looking at the clock, I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. So, so yeah, Jill, is there any questions?
Yeah, we do have a couple questions. Oh, I wanted to let you know, so you built the report in 2 minutes. So your as of aging report took 2 minutes, and then an additional minute to add all of the different visualizations. So pretty quick. But the first question we have is, can you apply JD Edwards security?
Great question. And that right hitting the heartstrings of governance and confidence. So yeah, so this is all connected from JD Edwards, and we do have most customers, part of our setup, we do include a kind of a checkbox. Do you want to apply JD Edwards security? So if you like to company security or business unit security, we can honor that. So we in essence bring into the model and all the security tables, we identify the users based on what roles they're in. So if I'm logging into this and I only have access to company 3, the only thing that comes back to my view is company 3. Whereas somebody else that logged in, they only see companies 1 and 9. That's what they see. So that all that can be applied. Some customers need to go beyond that. They have executives that need to see this that don't have a JD Edwards log on. So in that case, then we just basically do a hybrid of that. But that's something we can follow up with the real requirements around that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, next question. What happens if your budgets are outside of JD Edwards?
Another great question. So you'll notice when we're in the financial model, and even as I'm here, I could go and if I want to go grab some other data, view hidden, I can then expand. It's all the models exposed, so we can do cross modular. You know, what's my AP to GL stuff? As long as there's any kind of linkage between them, which we've already identified, then we can get that. But when we're looking at the GL, and we could see like our budgets here, right? So this appearance is right next to our actuals, but these budgets could come right from JD Edwards if that's where they are. If you have a budget and planning system and they live somewhere else, we could pull them from that. We have some customers that still have budgets sitting in spreadsheets, so we could pull from that as well. But yeah, it's really agnostic to make sense. We do recommend, if it's an option, to feed them back to JD Edwards if you can, just so you have more of a kind of a source of truth that's part of your ERP. But yeah, we can support either one.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, next question is, do you handle or work with fixed assets?
Yeah, so that's a question that comes up time. This is a financial related type session. So we do have an enterprise asset module. It does cover fixed assets, but also preventive maintenance, the maintenance schedule. So it's kind of covering both of those. So it's actually a separate module with us. that's an optional add-on. So to kind of cover fixed assets as part of, with the financial suite, you got GL, AP, AR, and fixed assets, which is part of our enterprise asset management.
Okay, great. And then the final question, what infrastructure is required for the platform to work?
Yeah, so that's probably something we'll have to follow up on the details there. The technology that we're using, again, it is Microsoft, built using Microsoft technology and Power BI. Last spring, Microsoft came out with Power BI Premium, which is a generation 2 of that, where pretty much all within the platform, you can do all these things. We used to require a bunch of SQL servers and things to be running on VMs and virtual machines and virtual servers, but now it's all kind of managed within the Power BI framework. So based on your approach, if you want to go directly against your JD Edwards data and feed it into that model directly, or create a mirrored copy of that data, which we call an optimized data store that could live out in Azure. A few different things we can do about that, but basically just walk through, understand a little bit more about, what your record counts are, to understand your volumes, because it might determine what the best approach is. But really, it's all, native Microsoft Power BI technology driving everything you've seen today.
Okay, perfect. No other questions. One of the things I want to make sure is just to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy day. Oh, go ahead, Adam.
The questions have popped up, actually, I think. So where is this model stored? Is it cloud-based? Wonderful question.
Okay.
So again, this model, it's in the Power BI. So when you deploy Power BI, there's a free version, there's a Power BI Pro and a Power BI Premium. So to get these large data sets, it's required for virtually all JD Edwards customers, you need to be on Premium. So that's going to be on a per user license or a per capacity. But most customers, if they're less than 250 users, are typically on a per user. So that's required. We can actually deploy these as large data sets. So it is in Microsoft's Power BI tenant or cloud, which is sharing the same infrastructure of the Microsoft Azure cloud. So even though it is really part of Power BI, it's under that umbrella. And so for a lot of customers, if they might be running JD Edwards on premise and their data set's going to be put out there in the Azure cloud, we might want to trickle the JD Edwards data into a dedicated database called an optimized data store in that environment out there. So it's just closer to the data. So it loads your cubes faster. But we can take that offline and take a deeper dive on that as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that. I had missed that one. Well, again, thank you everybody for joining us today. We will be sending the recording of the presentation and the educational session out to everybody so that you'll have it and you can review it if you want. If anybody wants additional information, you can send us a note now. We can reach back out to you. The great thing is that we can always put together a customized demonstration of the solution so you can see exactly how the solution would work in your organization based on what modules that you have it at your company, which JD Edwards modules. But you can also send an email to us at info@preferredstrategies.com, and we'll go ahead and reach back out to you. So thanks again, everybody, for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Thank you.